A young man, like many of his peers, voluntarily enlisted to serve in the Afghan war. After writing a formal request to be sent to a hotspot, he wanted to test himself while fulfilling his duty to his homeland. Unfortunately, he did not know at the time how this decision would affect his life and how a simple piece of paper would have repercussions for his future. A small part of the Soviet troops was stationed in the Pamir Mountains. It was expected that an army of Pashtuns would pass through this territory to reinforce the main forces engaged in combat with the Soviet army on the border of Afghanistan and Tajikistan. Serving in these areas was tough. The living conditions were primitive, and there was a constant fear of losing one's life or a close comrade. All of this caused constant anxiety, a fear of being stabbed in the back, and led to insomnia. Therefore, the hero of this story gladly substituted for his fellow soldiers when they asked him to stand guard for them. The young man had trouble sleeping and could easily stay awake all night on duty without closing his eyes. When it was quiet around him, he entertained himself by interacting with various animals, from scorpions to snakes. One day, in a trench, he stumbled upon a few baby cobras. He had long since become accustomed to the presence of poisonous creatures, so he was not particularly frightened, although he treated such company with due caution. His company had not changed its location for a long time, and the young man often stood guard in the same spot where the baby cobras lived. While on duty, he often fed these little snakes more for amusement than anything else. At first, the snakes were wary of him, but they soon got used to him leaving food for them. Although they did not let him get too close, they showed a readiness to defend themselves from a distance. His comrades were surprised by the strange relationship between the man and the snakes. Usually, soldiers tried to exterminate all dangerous predators around their sleeping area to ensure nothing threatened them at night. But here was a young warrior who was taming poisonous creatures. Since almost everyone found an unusual hobby during the war, they decided not to disturb the cobra brood and simply let the snakes live in peace, albeit under the responsibility of this young man. That day, the young man again did not close his eyes and volunteered to take over the post for one of his comrades. His duty passed quickly. The replacement should have arrived a long time ago, but for some reason, he was delayed. More than half an hour passed, and no one came to relieve him. The soldier immediately sensed that something was wrong. He decided to climb out of the trench to find out what had happened, but as soon as he tried to do so, a huge cobra fell on him from above. It was one he had occasionally fed as well. The snake was behaving extremely aggressively. Spreading its hood, it blocked the man's path. The young man was terrified and froze in place, afraid to move, knowing the snake could attack at any moment. All he could do was stand still and wait for the reptile to calm down. He stood like that for several hours, and only when dawn began to break did the cobra relax its stance and smoothly descend onto the sand. Then it calmly slithered away, as if it had never intended to attack him. The young man jumped out of the trench in joy and ran at full speed back to his unit. When he arrived, he suddenly stumbled upon several lifeless bodies of his comrades. It turned out that while the young man was on guard, the Pashtuns attacked the camp and silently slaughtered the entire combat unit. He managed to find a radio and call for reinforcements, but it was already too late. Thanks to the cobra, the young man became the only survivor of this massacre. The snake had kept him at his post, preventing him from approaching the military camp, which was already doomed. Later, the young man was accused of treason. However, they could not prove the guard's guilt in the incident. Therefore, he was simply discharged. In any case, this incident shows that any creature is capable of feeling gratitude, and even the smallest act of kindness can ultimately save a person's life.